The Genshin developer discussion notes for patch 4.0 have recently been posted, and there's a lot of good things on the horizon. But do these improvements really solve any problems, or are they just a band-aid and temporary solution? Hey everyone, Shark here, and in this video we're going to talk about the good and the bad of the developer discussion notes. I want to start off by saying these are just preliminary notes and will obviously have a lot more changes down the line. And while these changes are very welcome, I think some of them are really helpful, while others actually do very little to address core problems. So let's go over the updates they have planned, and we'll talk about how good they actually are. The first thing they talk about are artifacts, and this is a big one, so buckle in. They are increasing the maximum capacity of artifacts from 1500 to 1800. On the surface, this seems like a really great change, but it's really not, and I want to lay out why. When you are a relatively new player, you don't have a lot of artifacts, so this doesn't really seem like an issue at all. But as you play the game more and get more characters, you naturally will get more artifacts. Artifacts have always been a really important part of character builds, and so as you get more characters, you're naturally going to need a lot more artifacts. And once you have your most used characters built up, that is level 80 plus, talent levels 8 plus, weapon level 90 and so forth, you basically don't have much to do with your resin besides farming artifacts or ley lines. And at that point in the game, you end up farming so many artifacts to get godly pieces, but anyone who's farmed artifacts will tell you that it's very hard because you not only have to get the right main stat, but also the right combination of good 4 substats and good rolls on those 4 substats as you level those artifacts up. It's a total RNG lasagna. One layer of RNG on top of another layer on top of another layer of RNG and so forth. And what ends up happening is you start to save artifacts with really good substats just in case there's a character released or one who's rerun that could use them that you really want. You'll also start to save artifacts if you need alternative sets for characters if you want to use them in different playstyles. Like for example, I have a regular Noblesse Oblige Bennett, but I also have a Thundering Fury Skill Spam Bennett. So what ends up happening is you end up with a ton of artifacts because you have a lot of characters built. You're also saving artifacts for the future for characters you may want, and you may have alternative sets that you use depending on certain situations. And you still need to save some lower grade artifacts to level up your 5-star artifacts. As you can imagine, this makes your inventory suffer really badly. I'm constantly near the 1500 artifact limit at all times, and while this extra 300 inventory spaces for artifacts will help, it's really not going to help as much as it seems. Think about it, we're getting a bunch of new characters in Fontaine, and they'll likely want their own special artifact set, and if Fontaine is similar to the other regions, we'll be getting 6 new artifact sets too. That's really going to eat up a lot of artifact space even with the extra 300 slots. And since the artifact inventory counts equipped artifacts, that's only going to make the problem worse. If it didn't count equipped artifacts, I could save about 225 slots right there. That's why I think the artifact increase is actually something that makes the problem worse. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out. Increasing the artifact inventory increases your incentive to hoard more artifacts instead of destroy them. And from MiHoYo's standpoint, this would make sense if you had to pay for artifact storage, but since you don't, you're more incentivized to keep artifacts than you are to get rid of them. If Hoyo instead did the opposite and incentivized players to destroy artifacts, it would solve this problem while also saving space on their servers and not forcing them to increase the artifact limit with every new region. So you may be wondering what I mean by incentivizing the destruction of artifacts would actually help or solve this problem. Well, I mean that if you had less artifact space, let's say maximum of 1,000, but there was a system like in Honkai Star Rail where you could destroy 5-star artifacts to get a special item that allowed you to craft an artifact of your choice, well, that would then incentivize you to destroy all of your bad or mid-tier artifacts and craft better ones. The system could also be expanded a lot further, and you could use this certain number of special items that you get from destroying 5-star artifacts to trade in for things that would either force a main stat on an artifact you want, and or block rolls into a substat you don't want to level up. That way you can have a better chance of getting a really good artifact. Because right now the system is such that you just have to keep running domains so you can get 5-star artifacts in hopes that you get a good one that rolls well. It's a system that incentivizes accumulation without any removal. And to be honest, I don't think something like this is a big ask since Hoyo already has a system like this in their other games. Now that was a lot, but there's still more updates on artifacts. So let's move on to another artifact improvement, the updated Scam Box. The Mystic Offering, or Scam Box as we call it, is getting an update to include a bunch of new artifact sets. These new Scam Box artifacts will include Tenacity, Pale Flame, Shiminawa, Emblem, Husk, Clam, Vermilion, and Echoes of an Offering. This is really nice, especially for sets like the Husk of Opulent Dreams or Tenacity of the Millilith that are really resin inefficient to farm. Using the Scam Box for an artifact like the Emblem of Severed Fate is less worth it because that domain is actually pretty resin efficient and really good to farm. But it's great that these other sets are added because you really don't want to spend your resin on a domain to get a specific character artifacts when you could spend your resin on an artifact domain that could get 4 to 5 characters a benefit instead of just one. So nice update here. Next, they're allowing us to destroy 4-star artifacts, which converts them into Mora. It's a nice option, but honestly, it's not going to be better for most people than just using 4-star artifacts for leveling. If you want to destroy artifacts to convert them into Mora, I recommend destroying 1-star and 2-star artifacts for Mora, but keeping 3-star and 4-star artifacts for leveling. You can use 3-star artifacts for +4 or sometimes +8, and then use 4-star artifacts for the rest of the leveling on your 5-star artifacts. I don't really see this change as that significant unless they make it so we can get Sanctifying Essence and Sanctifying Unctions from destroying 3-star and 4-star artifacts, and that would be really huge, but I don't see that they mention anything like that anywhere here, so I don't think that's happening. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see that as coming anytime in the future, but maybe they'll implement something like this down the line. Next, they mention locking artifacts and how they are going to make it easier in the future. I imagine this will likely be something similar to the sort feature we already have, which allows us to take artifacts and sort them by main set and substats. For example, you could lock all artifacts with crit rate or crit damage, or you could lock a crit rate circlet with crit damage and energy recharge % as substats, or you could potentially lock hydro damage goblets with HP % and energy recharge %, or something like that. This would be really nice if this locking feature would go through all of your artifacts and just lock the ones you wanted based on the parameters you set, and it would really help me out and probably a lot of other players too. I'm excited to see what they do with this. There's no details about it, they just say that it's something they're going to do in the future, so we'll have to keep an eye out for it. The next thing they mention is how they are discussing a plan to allow players to equip artifacts, quote, as quickly as possible. I hope this means saving artifacts in loadouts, which is something players have been asking for since basically the beginning of Genshin, but it could be something else weird like artifacts are just auto-equipped to characters after you set some sort of parameters. There's no details on this really, so I can't say and I don't have any real information to go off of, but I really hope they implement artifact loadouts because that would be very, very helpful. Next, they're adding new Battle Pass weapons. There will be 10 total Battle Pass weapons, and the old Battle Pass weapons will not be replaced by the new ones. They'll just be added alongside them. This will give people more options for weapons if they do want to purchase the Battle Pass, and hopefully they're going to be worth getting, because some of the weapons that they've come out with recently are just a little, yikes. We don't have any official weapon details yet, but I'll be sure to cover them when we do. We're also getting a spectator mode in TCG, which is pretty cool and can make for some fun things like TCG tournaments. Maybe we'll have a Shark Invitational tournament. Who knows? The next update they talk about is Fontaine and Exploring, and their special term they mention, which I'll read in their words for you, is, with transoceanic source water, you can freely traverse the depths and explore the unique scenery of Fontaine. So we now have a name for the thing that's going to enable us to explore underwater. Transoceanic source water. We've already got the parametric transformer, statue of Her Excellency Almighty Narukami Gosho, God of Thunder, and now the transoceanic source water. I guess the term diving didn't quite have the same ring to it. In any case, they don't mention that we can use this in other regions, and I would honestly be surprised if we can use this outside of Fontaine. However, because of the TRANSOCEANIC in the name, it makes me think that we can go to other areas, as TRANSOCEANIC literally means beyond, through, or changing oceans. So hopefully we can dive and explore in regions outside of Fontaine. I think if they do allow this, it will be a little bit like fishing, where we can only do it in certain spots, and not just free dive from Mondstadt to Inazuma like a school of migrating sea turtles. The next improvement we're getting is actually a really intelligent one from Hoyo. We're getting a teleport point that unlocks automatically and is right in front of Fontaine as long as you complete the Archon quest in Mondstadt. This is really good for newer players, as they won't have to run all the way to Fontaine if they get a character from Fontaine and need to level them up. I think they learned their lessons with Inazuma, since those characters are hard capped at level 40 until you can go there later in the Archon quest, but for story reasons it would be hard for them to go back and fix the way you first travel to Inazuma, but at least this is a good sign going forward. And while this doesn't affect players who've been playing Genshin for a long time as much, it is really good for newer players, especially if they get characters from Fontaine and want to go level them up right away. Next, they are finally adding multi-layered maps in 4.0, aka underground maps. They've already mentioned that they're going to be doing this, but I am really happy it's finally coming. It was really annoying to use third-party sites to see exactly where you needed to go underground, so I'm really glad this will be implemented into the game. They also added gyroscope support for controllers on PC, PS4, and PS5. I don't know how much impact this will really have. I don't play with a controller. Maybe someone who does play with a controller can tell me, but more features and support are always good, so this is probably a decent update. The final improvement they talk about is they say that daily commissions are not flexible enough and that they are looking into a new format for daily rewards. My thoughts are that they might use a system similar to Honkai Star Rail, where you essentially have one daily commission and then there's a list of options you can choose from for your daily rewards. They may give you 7 options each day, but you might only have to do 4 of them to get your full rewards. These could be varied in a lot of different ways, from doing domains, to fighting a world boss, doing a ley line, going fishing, playing the TCG, completing an abyss floor, and so forth. There aren't any details here, so we really don't know what's going to come, and it's not going to happen in 4.0, it's just something they mentioned they want to do in the future. But I feel like this is going to be something that is probably not going to be really fresh and really fun. I think they'll just have something that's maybe a little bit more unique, but at the end of the day, it'll feel like you're just doing a commission with a slightly different flavor. So unless they do something really novel, I think it's going to end up feeling the same as a commission does already, it's just going to be a little bit different in 1 or 2 small aspects. But I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that the dailies are really exciting and fun. We'll just have to wait and see. And that's all for these developer notes. As usual, they are pretty light on the detail, but I am looking forward to the 4.0 livestream preview, which is happening in about a day and a half. Hopefully they'll have a lot more details there. We'll be watching that special program live at 7:30 a.m. UTC -4, so if you're around, come check me out on Twitch and we can share in the hype together.